Welcome to the Transform Sales Podcast, where forward-thinking business leaders come to share their experiences and ideas, learn from each other, and amplify their results together. Oh man, Transform Sales Podcast. This is a sales agency growth edition. We got Steve, we got Kevin Warner, special guest CEO, founder and CEO of Leadium. Steve, what do you want to tell the people?
We former agency owner, and I get to talk to guys like Kevin like once every 3 months, and he gives me a bunch of advice. I'm also out of breath because I sprinted to grab water. It reminds me that now that I don't run an agency more, I actually have time to work out, so I probably need to start running those stairs a little bit more. But no, I'm here is we get to work with agencies daily at Reggie. So being a former agency owner and now getting to talk to them and seeing how we can help them, obviously it's a world of conversations to live in. And a lot's changed in the last 6 months since I owned an agency, or 7 months, or however long ago it was. So excited to be here with Kevin.
Awesome. So then I'll just say one statement for anybody checking us out here on LinkedIn Live. We are talking about sales agency growth, but if you're not a sales agency and you hire sales agencies, or you're thinking about starting one, you still have value to get out of these conversations. So tune in. Don't jump off if you got something there that might be of value to you. Our guest today is Kevin from Leadium. Thank you for showing up today, Kevin. You know, this is a hard man to get. So we're going to get right into it because Kevin has a hard stop. Kevin, let's start this off with, what was your biggest challenge related to scaling your agency, the biggest challenge you faced related to scaling your sales agency?
Yeah, it's a great question. Before I get into it, it's been 2014 since we started our first agency, then 2016 with Leadium. I think Sergey and I often talk now, it's getting into a little bit of Groundhog's Day, where you have all the same problems almost every day. And I'll tell you, that's even 8, 9, 10 years into this space. So I think a lot of younger agency owners probably have a lot of problems that even the largest and longer lasting companies are feeling as well. I'm glad I'm not starting an agency today because I can't imagine the market starting off. But what Sergey and I were 26, 27 when we started Leadium and to where we are today. So we've learned a lot. And inside of growing in that space, we've gone through this idea of scale so many times and so many iterations. And I think as an agency owner, especially in this new frontier of sales development agencies that's still kind of sorting itself out, you get lost in what do you want your company to be a lot. And I have a conversation with some younger agency owners, and Steve probably felt this as well. And I know the route Steve went, which is, hey, this hyper growth, because so much of your content was around it. And Sergey and I, on the flip side of that, said, let's do slow growth. Let's eat our own dog food. Let's slowly grow. Let's focus on brand and, bring on 1 customer, 2 customers a month extra, whatever we can service. It worked out over 9 years, but obviously we're not a high growth, high scale company. But the biggest problem is figuring out what you want to do, because you can get burnt and lose a lot of revenue if you decide to do too much too quickly. In 2020, 2021, we kind of went that route. We decided, let's scale again. And it's tough. And I'll back it up even more. In 2016, we met with like a Y Combinator type of tech firm when we were in this dreamland. And we went to join that, Y Combinator class, essentially. I forget who the one is that has a bunch of locally ones, that Y Combinator competitor. And we went to join. They were in Las Vegas. I went and met them at like demo day or whatever it was to see if we can join their fall class of 2017. And I remember one of the main investors was like, how do you scale? I was like, we just scale. We grow more. He's like, yeah, but you're a people business. If I brought you 100 customers tomorrow, how do you service 100 customers tomorrow? And it was at that point, Sergey and I realized, okay, we're not in tech. Let's get everything you think about like high valuations and high growth and hyper growth out of our minds. This is going to be slow burn, and we're in this on our own. There is no going and getting help. There is no going and getting funding. We're in this on our own and our own trajectory, because the answer is you can't bring in 100 people. I know there are some agencies that are lower end products because you try to outgrow. And we tried it again in 2021 into 2022, where we opened up a Dominican Republic office, hired 100 people, got a 12,000 square foot lease, multi-year lease. And that's when we really went against what we knew and were comfortable with. We invested close to $1 million in that build out of our own money from what we saved up over the years. And it was closed within 2 years. And in early 2022, we shut down the entire thing, because one thing you have to learn on that scale is when you are growing, the people you hire on a people service business, one is you can't be involved anymore. So when you're selling in the early days on your experience and your expertise and your helping of their campaigns, it's no more. When you have 60, 80, 120 clients, you are not involved in campaign management. You don't even know who your clients are at that size of an agency. So now you have to have a team who can deliver. And inherently, that's where you run into the problem that we found in the sales space, is that there's such a race to the floor of pricing. Like, right? There's a ceiling on pricing, and you're either in 1, 2, or the third bucket, and that's it. And you fit in one of those, and you can't exceed it. Even if you can provide better quality, you can't exceed that, because another person can offer it lower. And because you can't increase pricing, you can't get better staff. And if you can't get better staff, you have a lower quality product. If you have a lower quality product in sales, you aren't setting appointments. If you aren't setting appointments, you have high churn. And now you're just a churn factory, both clients and staffing wise, which is just a sign of destruction. And it kind of eats at your soul as an agency owner, which is why we in 2022 shut down everything international and turned into a smaller niche play in the US. A long-winded answer to kind of get there.
So just to recap it then, related to what was your biggest challenge when it comes to the biggest challenge you faced when scaling your sales agency, you're going to defining who you want to be.
Defining who you want to be is pivotal, and the time in which you want to get there. And the reason I say that is you have to fundamentally get to that mindset. And I know another couple large business owners, and they know that on the agency side, and they know it's slow growth. And if you don't slow grow a people service in our sales space, then it's going to explode. And defining what you want, I think, is key. So Sergey and I, as an example, we want a lifestyle company where it's a small, tight-knit team. We get paid well. Can I get paid more money if I go become a VP of sales? 100%. I know my colleagues who are VPs of sales and what they're doing at companies where I could arguably add benefit immediately, and we're not making that. Do we get to run a company and make a good living and have a lot of freedoms and flexibilities? Yes. If you want revenue and a large exit, then you're going to have to change everything you categorically think about how you want to run the business then, because you got to build it for that. So it really comes to, what do you want out of it? And that was a big thing that we had to figure out.
Yeah, that helps. That helps on the who you want to be. I was going to peel back the onion a little bit on that, but now you clarified it. It's really around, what do you want out of this business? What kind of business do you want to build? So that you could
exactly right. What type of business do you want to build? For us, scale, as soon as we saw it diminish. So when we started Leadium from day one in 2016, it was a brand. Let's build a brand. I'm an employee. If I don't do my job, I'm gone. I understand that. So fundamentally, we understand that this business is not Kevin. This business is not Sergey. I am in a position within the company that has a route to get rid of me if I am not performing in my job as the CEO. And so what we're building is the brand name of Leadium, and we have to stand by the quality. We always said we're the Deloitte in the room, and we're cocky to that point too. So if we're on a sales call, if we're on a channel on a WhatsApp group, we are cocky to that because, hey, we have the experience, we have the expertise, we have the branding. If you're evaluating multiple agencies, how are we different in the services world? We bring briefcases and we dress up in suits to our meetings. We don't come in flip-flops like the new kids, right? And so that's going to expel this, oh, okay, that's a certain feeling around that. So that's what we wanted to build. But the minute we saw that scaling diminished that name or that brand, we had to peel it back and say, whoa. We're not just going to scale for the sake of scaling and some quick dollars, because what we're building is kind of different. So you kind of have to decide what you want the company to be. And one way we always thought about it, and I know we're going on into a tangent, probably off topic, but if you're hit by a bus tomorrow, and I don't know how you approached it, Steve, but we literally, when we founded Leadium, had this conversation all the time, because we saw it as a company's not signing with Kevin, they're signing with the company. And that's still our mantra. And if a bus hits Steve tomorrow, or a bus hits you tomorrow, ugly way to think about it, but we deal with that. I think you even hear like Mark Cuban say it on the Shark Tank. If a bus hits you tomorrow, what is your agency? Like, what is that company? What is Leadium if Kevin gets hit by a bus tomorrow? Okay, well, we have a system. People step right in, and there's already processes, everything's handed over, etc. And if you have a smaller agency, that's kind of what you need to think about is it just you and you're selling your lifestyle and what you want to do? Or are you trying to build a company? If you're trying to build a company, you might have to get removed at one point. So have you set it up like that, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I would add, a question somebody asked me once when I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the business. Kevin, I would talk to you, and then, I met Amir, I met a lot of mostly good people who had mostly good advice. But at the end of the day, like, of course I would go back and listen to it differently. But, when I heard the word lifestyle business, I thought that's not what I want, right? I don't want this thing that's there forever. And there's probably something I can talk to my therapist about that would make sense. But like, it seemed like a lot of work to me to be building a forever thing. Like, and the build, which happened quickly, almost polar opposite of how Leadium would do it. And I will say, by the way, Kevin, I saw the Leadium ads. You guys had like the banner ads. It was black and green back in 2016. And then I read Ryan, Phone Ready Leads Ryan's, his book. And like, you guys were the two people who I learned how to even think of what is a sales development agency. Like, it was so rare back in 2016. It was a fifth of what it is now, maybe a fourth, and like population wise. And so I looked at it like, hey, everybody needs this. There's 200 plus players in the market. What are we going to be? And I said, you know what? There's not in this space. Nobody's working their own brand to make an impact on LinkedIn. And obviously you saw the rest of that play out. Now, that didn't all go so well. Like, we grew so quickly that the second we hit a clip of 500K MRR, like, I remember I said, I feel like I just want to sit in the corner and kind of cry right now, because there's so much stress. When you have 58 clients, this is the first year you've been in business. Like you said, Kevin, you're saying this. And someone said, Steve, but they're not you. And you need to stop talking to them about the things that you could do if you were doing every one of these campaigns. And I'll give you a good example. I would say simply, we use Zoom Info Chrome extension on this way, and we go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And someone said, they don't do that, Steve, right? I said, what do you mean? Of course we do that. That's in the playbook. They said, yeah, but they haven't implemented it yet because they don't want to do it. And that was the moment I felt like I lost control, because I was like, but they should be doing it. But that's what you should do. And that's when it became apparent to me that heading into it, not in an operational or foundational or fiduciary responsible way, even with my own cash, I learned the hard lesson of growth that quickly can very much start to lead to attrition, customer attrition, employee attrition. And so I'm kind of the opposite story of you, where if anybody's listening there and they want to get an agency business to get rich quick, number one, I haven't seen it happen yet. Number two, I tried it and it didn't work. So there you go. Number three, go back to circle one and start over. It's monopoly and it's a new day.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I know we're turning this now into a topic of early agency, which is probably good because I don't think there's enough stories around, hey, you're starting an agency, especially in the sales development space. What are you getting yourself into? It's easy to sign 3 clients, right? And I think if you want to sign 3 clients and service 3 clients, that's a fantastic place to be in. I all for it. Like that is fantastic. I think there's so many, like from the Steves to the me's to even Tony and Amir, that the advice you can get for servicing that, because hey, there is something to, I can do outbound today for 3 clients and not have to have an FTE and get paid, if not more, the same, but it creates some flexibility and freedoms. You run into a question always at that frame, which is, well, why not 4? Then why not 5? And then that's where it all starts again. But at the same time, I mean, we're 9 years in at Leadium, and now like with a 1-year-old child and a family. And I was on a cruise, and for 5 of the 7 days, I had to work 5 hours of the day. So there's give and takes for what you end up building. And it's not necessarily the financial freedom or this. It's, hey, you really have to love sales and what you do and the challenges. And, oftentimes clients aren't, happy with results, but how are you consulting them through it to, fix the pipeline? And it's a tough battle, depending on how you create what you want to create. Even harder when it's you selling your persona. Obviously, Steve, what you did, because now the expectation is Steve's involved in everything that I do. But yeah, it's a tough spot. And you got to remember, too, that as soon as you pass a certain point, and Mir knows this about me, and Steve knows it about me, as much as we're friends in this space, you are now an enemy. And I don't mind talking bad about what you do and how a client shouldn't sign with you, because welcome to the big leagues, and, roll up your sleeves, because we're battling for the same thing. And I have families to protect. I have employees I need to protect. And a lot of times that's my revenue, and I'm going to win it. And if you go out of business, I'll shed a quick tear and then we'll move on. But at the same time, I think if you're doing a great product and you're on your side, standing for what you believe in, the strategy you believe in, how you want to go about the client execution, you have to stand on that, because that's how we win deals. It's not selling me or selling Steve. It's selling a process and an outcome.
So Kevin, I want to pull it back in, and this is good information. I have to ask this question, because as we think about this, starting your sales agency, what are you getting into? You have the benefit of, this isn't your first agency. This is like your second run. So if we pull this back to, for those of you who don't know, Kevin was there part of building science up and whatnot. So when we take it to that biggest challenge of deciding who you want to be, and then how did you fix it, and you juxtapose your experience having been in a sales agency before and then going for it the second time, could you tell us a little bit more then about how you all defined who you wanted to be, for those that might be trying to define better who they want to be as an agency?
Yeah, a lot of it at that time, we had the fortune in 2014 to have time on our side, because when we started science in 2014, it was new. The sales development world was so new. There was only a handful of players around who are still around today. And you had more clients than you could, suffice. Back then, if you think about the average price of a contract in 2014 for a full service program, I think it was like $1,800 to $2,100 a month for lead gen, execution, everything. Email only, because email worked. You didn't need to do phone calls, and it was just go. And so easy to sign a client. So you had time on your side because low contract values, etc. And it was through that we almost got the trial and error of what do we want to do. And I always talk like science. Our model was, let's be, I know I had a conversation with you guys, the McDonald's of the space, because there's so much need for it. Service is so many people in the world, obviously. Not the greatest hamburger, not the greatest product. Do a lot of people like it? Yeah. Do just as many people hate it? Yeah. But, it's that 70-30 rule, or the 80-20 rule, is if we can service 80% of the people that we bring in, we know we'll underserve 20, but okay, they'll exit stage left. One of the interesting things in the sales development space is, so long as you don't royally screw everything up, clients won't give negative reviews. So the idea of reviews didn't exist back then. But even today, you really have to do things wrong to leave a negative review on a review site. Most will just know that it didn't work. So if you are signing clients, you know, in that aspect, when we started Leadium, we knew we wanted, the reason we left science was we didn't like that model. We understood how you had to have a process, and the process at an agency is key. We follow a lot of how marketing agencies have come up, and marketing agencies follow processes. Their onboarding is a process. Clock timing, you know, clock timing your team on how much hours is being spent for one project versus another project is a process internal. Hiring and ramping is a process. Client reporting is a process. And so you knew you had to have a process. We just made an In-N-Out or a Five Guys, a better burger and a better product with better ingredients. But we still had to follow the same fundamentals of what we learned during that phase, which has really served us well. And if you don't have processes, that's where everything falls apart. And that goes back to, you know, figuring out who you want to be as an agency owner, and even as a growing agency, is you have to have a process that backs up that. Because you can sell anything in this space pretty much, because people are buying on the trust and the belief. That's just services in general. But you have to have a process that can then deliver and execute upon it. And if you sold something your company is not able to execute on, it ends up being more of a distraction than a benefit.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think at the end of the day, the one lesson I learned out of all of that is it's your company, right? It's, you get to do what you want with it, including burn it to the ground, make it really great, you know, have high attrition or low attrition. Like, that's your baby. And I think this message couldn't be more clear. Like, what you're saying, whether it's a new agency owner or someone different, is I would agree with you, Kevin. If I lost my, you know, call it my job today, and I had to go back and I said, well, what am I going to do? I would likely say there's 3 clients I could go service. I could do really well. This is the specific value I can add. And I would have made twice as much as I made being the CEO of a growing agency doing $500K a month. Now, you know, for me, like what we did, and I'm very open and honest about it now, to what I can be, right? Because there's some things I would just never say, because I believe in contracts being contracts, right? And so, yes, did we do $500K a month and build up that? Yes. Like, was that the inflection point where our company started to break? It was about a month before that. It was about a month before it when I said, in order to be able to hit this financially, to hire more people, to pay them 30% more than the rest of the market, we have to do this. And they're all like, okay, Steve, we'll go do it. And I didn't read the fear in their eyes, because I kind of said at that point, get on the bus or off, because this is what growth is going to feel like. And it hurt. It hurt me. It hurt them. It hurt. Every process broke. We started to experience attrition. The existing clients who we were doing great with started to feel neglected. And so, like, hyper growth really, to me, I'd almost like get on a plane and fly there the next time I see it, just to say, don't do what I did. Trust me. Because fiscally, like, it's irresponsible for your own self to put the lives of your employees before yourself. Because it's my, you know, you start a company with $380K in cash, it's gone in 3 months, brother, you're at zero again. Like, you know, your college graduation, and guess what? Your employees, it's not their job to care about that. And you want to hire the people like Tony, like with Tony and Amir, where you can get this person who's just ironclad, like by your side. But that is where we can find someone who's like, I'm in line. Let's go, right? And so I think condensing that to a year also really hurts your chances at trying to make it happen. So, like, if you think about growth and how growth feels good, your analogy is we were trying to be a gourmet steakhouse, but we were running the back line like a Five Guys in a recession that couldn't find enough people, and we couldn't pay enough money. And on top of that, then they started to stop caring, because you feel lost when you're at a company of 40, 50, 60. And it just is this perpetual thing. Now, the good news is, anybody could listen to that and say, you know what, Kevin's right, Steve's right. The bad news is, Kevin, to your point, a lot of first-time business owners, which I was, and very naive, is you're addicted to growth. It's like the only thing that feels good when you're running a company is like, we're making more money. We're making more money. And at least to me. So be careful to be addicted to growth like I was, because I think if you looked at it, like if you took the net number, we'd be at the bottom of the charts.
Yeah.
Like number 100.
where we would be at a lower revenue, but we would be at a higher margin, which again, the higher margin gives you the flexibility. And that's where we played also was, and I talked to like the Steves and a lot of people in the space, and because our prices are really low for as much of experience and like specialty we have, the fact that we still charge $3,000 a month to some clients, it's kind of baffling to a lot of agency owners. And what we say is, well, we know what we're doing really well. And it's a little bit of economies of scale. We just happen to be at that scale already for what we need to be. But the reason we don't try to change it, even though a lot of advisors might say, hey, upcharge now, you can charge 10,000 a seat, you can charge 15,000 like the bigger players, is one, it's harder to sign, right? Inherently, a harder account to sign is go find those. And what we like to do is create that repetition. If I lose 3 accounts because of our price points and what we do and where we play, it's not impacting the business as a whole. I can outsell churn at that rate. If you sign bigger accounts, if you lose 3, that could be devastating to an agency owner, especially as you're trying to grow. So you're outspending capital. And so you don't have kind of a bankroll to kind of afford a negative like loss period. And in this space, it's a lot of month-to-month agreements. And so you've got to be ready for churn. I talking to private equity, they would say, hey, in your space, it doesn't matter. Churn doesn't matter, right? Churn doesn't affect your valuation in the sales development space so long as you have longevity in contracts, meaning you have enough, you're going to get shot on revenue. If you have consistent revenue, it doesn't matter how many clients it took to get that revenue, so long as it's consistent. But that was probably the biggest, when we tried to open up in the Dominican Republic, and the biggest investment in, you really saw it was how you need to approach employees or contract labor as an agency owner was probably the largest learning. One is employees will never care as much of a founder. So you got to understand that. 2 is your employees as an agency are placeholder jobs, right? These are people who, once they get the experience, will move on very quickly. And so you need to build a system for your team to say, hey, this is what we are. We're going to bring you in at maybe a raw or talent, because you might not be able to go get a job at Outreach quite yet because you don't have the experience yet, and that's okay. We have the ability to fast track you with experience, but at the same time, I know you might be leaving in 6 to 9 to 12 months, but that's fine because we got you there. We got the value from where you need to be, and now you have the experience. But at the same time, I don't have room for promotion. And that's a reality of our space. There is no promotion. The next person up is going to be the next person up. And being upfront with that is fantastic. But where it breaks down is when people stop caring earlier on. And if it's at a scale, like the people is the hardest component as you scale this type of business, because it gets lost. You don't have reporting where you can see, is everyone putting in their best? If our job is outbound phone calls, how great did you try to get a conversion? So maybe you did the numbers, but how was the effort? How do you measure effort when you're measuring it against 150 people? Very difficult. So now you're running more of a call center, which is what we were seeing, the route we were going. And once our call center is in sales, and if I have to police you on phone calls, then, hey, this is never going to work, because you're never going to try to have a conversation and fight through objections. You're just doing the job to do the job. And that's where it becomes a little bit harder to scale. And while I go back and say, hey, if you're starting an agency today, my first question sitting down would be, why? Like, what's your goal? Like, what do you want to do here? Like, if I could go back when I want to start an agency, I don't know if I had to do it today. I don't know if I would restart an agency today.
Ask Jake Dunlap when I started Title. I remember he was just like, "Oh, I'll give you all the leads," because he goes, "We started this and did a beta for like 3 months." He goes, "It made me hate my business. Like, it was so much work and such a heavy lift." Like, he was like, "That's not going to be one of our offerings, right?" And so I think he was smart, because he knows he's in the consulting, and the second you get into execution, you're out of consulting, and now your consulting is directly judged by your execution, right?
And so this conversation is going to where we could open up a whole nother can of worms. I've heard like several different challenges and lanes that we've gone down, trying to like control myself, but we're coming up at the top of the hour. So it's time to wrap this bad boy up. So just to recap, let me check and make sure we captured some of Kevin's big takeaways here. The biggest challenge, identifying who you want to be as you're talking about setting up the agency, right? One of the questions you shared that helped you all line up to what you all want to be was, if a bus hits you tomorrow, what's going to happen to your business? And probably the second one I just heard you say is, why do you want to start this thing in the first place? What do you need to get out of it? What do you want it to be? What do you want it to do for you?
And I know we're wrapping up. The who you want to be, outside of just what type of company do you want? Like, hey, are you a C Corp or an LLC? Two different structures. We always learn C Corp is you're chasing an exit, and you will one day want to exit just because of the stock structure. It makes a lot more sense. LLC, it's a different structure. So what type of company do you care? But it's more so. And now
don't be an S Corp, by the way.
Don't be an S Corp. That's you're in it just for the lifestyle company. It's more so, who do you want to be for client? Like, what type of campaigns are you running? If you think about the agency market now, it's competitive. And the way, and we're on a lot of sales calls, like 100, 200 a month, brand new discovery calls. And those discovery calls are, I'm analyzing 10 clients or 10 agencies. You guys are one of 10. You have to fundamentally decide, outbound sales, what's your take? Like, what's your approach? Because we're not selling outcomes or this or that. We're selling our approaches. And if we have competing approaches, fantastic. That's where you get the buy-in. Leadium is an example, and I know we're against it. We say programmatic. This is a programmatic ad space now, where you got to go segment, analytics. If you have good product market fit, you build it the right way, and you're running campaigns, and you have campaign strategists and less emphasis on people. And in that activity side of it, but you have to figure out what you're doing in the space. What's your hook? What's your product, essentially?
So you're basically back to, if we go through that loop, you started Leadium, you had the Dominican Republic office, you started going big, and then you guys probably came back to systematic, maintain the brand, sustainable growth approach rather than the grow at all cost approach.
Exactly right.
Awesome. Well, hope that those of you that had an opportunity to tune in live got some good takeaways from this conversation with Kevin and Steve. And Steve, you want to say something to wrap up?
I will say this: there's guys like Kevin, Amir, Tony, Steve Burton. I'm kind of just top of my head. Steve Richards is great, right? So if you're like into the agency space and somehow you stumbled across this, number one, lucky you. I couldn't find anybody talking about this on YouTube. I was literally typing in how to run an agency, like nothing. And so I would say there's also a chance for these vets, like anything, right? Is they're going to be able to coach people. And right now, guess what? They're doing it for free. At least you guys didn't charge me. And now I'm here giving back to the community, good, bad, or whatever the day is, because Kevin, you took 2 hours to talk to me. Now, whether or not that was telling me what to do or telling me what I was doing was wrong, I learned a lot, right? And so I would take advantage of that, because even a 20-minute phone call, if it's telling you you're doing the wrong thing, is validation from somebody who's been there.
Yep.
And listen to it with open ears, because that's like a free advisor. And then eventually, like, these guys are going to be coaching new agencies owners, right? When we're 55, 60, Kevin's going to be down sitting there with his partner, the kids, and we're going to be drinking things and Mai Tais or whatever in Colombia. Probably not making that much money still, because we ran a really solid business. And so we're living in Colombia for the currency conversion, not because we killed it. So
exactly.
That's your fairy tale ending right there.
Well, there it is. There you have it, folks. Kevin, thanks again for joining us today. The Swami of sales development agencies. Steve has already touted him and said, hey, if you want advice on how to do this thing, talk to Kevin Warner. And if you want an agency, talk to Leadium. If you want to deal with the Deloitte in the room.
There you go. Exactly.
All right, y'all.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin.
Have a
Thanks,
good one.
everyone.
We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.